do you think figures like Nick Fuentes, Tim Pool, and Candace Owens as potential allies in the fight against wokeism and cancel culture, even if we strongly disagree with them on certain ideological cultural issues? Well, I don't see those three people as being the same, right? Candace Owens, I view as somebody who is very open-minded and is at odds with the state, and she has evolved on a number of issues, right? And she was originally pro-Israel. She was just kind of your typical, conservative, Turning Points USA, Daily Wire, but she pivoted gradually into an anti-Israel position. She's friendly with Tucker Carlson, and Candace Owens, she will say good things, right? Tim Pool, I mean, it's funny. I was at Occupy Wall Street, so was he. I don't remember him, right? There was Luke Rudikowski. I remember very vividly. That guy who worked with InfoWars and is still out there. Him, I remember. He's kind of a Tim Pool-like figure. He's a conservative, a Trumper guy who was, doing a lot of video and stuff at Occupy Wall Street. I remember that guy very well. I do not remember Tim Pool for the life of me. But I mean, Tim Pool, I mean, I don't know. I don't see much of what he does having value. But I don't see him as toxic necessarily. I feel like Tim Pool is somebody who would, he probably, could go in a good direction given the right time. I just don't see him doing good work. Candace Owens does some good stuff. I don't see Tim doing any good things now. Nick Fuentes, I think, is completely toxic. He is absolutely and completely toxic. Okay. And I'll tell you why. Because of the way he talks. He is a swarmy, sarcastic little guy who gets on there and talks like this, and he uses words like he uses ethnic slurs, not just for Jews, but for Black people, for other minorities, and he has a sarcastic voice, and he cultivates his audience to act like assholes, and he basically makes people think that it's okay to act that way, and it's not, right? And he gets them into the kind of this bubble where being a sarcastic, slimy asshole who is sarcastic and talks about, Black people and Jews and gay people and others in very derogatory terms. Everything about Nick Fuentes is repugnant to me. I'll just be honest with you. And on top of that, the icing on the cake is that Nick Fuentes mobilizes his audience against the people who are the closest to him. He is the enemy of Marjorie Taylor Greene. Marjorie Taylor Greene is out there with Epstein's victims in front of Congress. It was amazing, right? I mean, she's out there with Epstein's victims trying to push a law to make Epstein's records and files public, right? She's out there fighting. She is anti-Israel, right, and opposing Israel loudly. And so you think Nick Fuentes would be like, she's great. She's great. I like her. No, he's not. He calls her Large Marge. That's what he calls her. He calls her fat. Right? Which, I mean, I don't know why he would call her that. She's in really good shape. I mean, Marjorie Taylor Greene is in really good shape. I would never want to get into a fight with Marjorie Taylor Greene. She's in amazing shape. But he calls her Large Marge. And he brings up rumors about her divorce. Well, her divorce is none of my goddamn business. I am not her ex-husband. And he brings up stuff about her divorce, which we don't know the details of, right? And on top of that, he calls her fat, which she is not. She's in very good shape. And she's a conservative like he is. And he insults her in a childish way. He brings up stuff about her personal life. That is one thing about the CIA. The CIA are the biggest bunch of perverts, sick people out there, right? They are obsessed with everything below the belt, right? It's something about the intelligence world, right? I mean, it's like the Epstein stuff and all of that. And it's like they are convinced that, I think it's like the Freudian thing. They are convinced that no one does anything for any other reason than trying to have sex, right? Everything is secretly sexual. Right. And that is what they are obsessed with. They want to find out everyone's dirty sex laundry and get it out there. And that's what they think. Right. And he's on there. I mean, it's like she's out there fighting for the causes that Nick Fuentes supposedly believes in. And he's talking about she had sex with somebody. And yeah, her ex-husband said that and she's fat. And, I mean, who cares, right? But that's how the deep state are, right? And the fact that he would even go there That's one thing about this tech bro culture, right? This is one thing. I've noticed this. There's the Groypers that are supporters of Nick Fuentes. There are some other online communities, and they get really nasty really fast, and they say unforgivable things really fast. Look, there's somebody that was kind of friendly to this YouTube channel for a while. She came on here, Luna Oi from Vietnam, right? And Luna, she supports Vietnam, her country. She says it's a socialist country. She has a YouTube channel. She's married to a guy who is like a bread tuber, kind of a bread tube anarchist, but she had a YouTube channel. She did say that Vietnam was socialist. She was making content. She came on here fine. Out of the blue, a certain community that just popped up out of nowhere started fighting with her. And at first, I saw the disagreement and I was just like, okay. And I don't even know what they were disagreeing about. And it immediately got sexual and nasty. And they started calling her husband, who's a white American dude, calling him a sex pat, right? And they started, and it got nasty really quick and sexual really quick, and it didn't have to. How about just disagreeing, right? And once you go there, once it gets nasty and sexual, there's no turning back, right? It's one thing if somebody says you're a conservative. It's one thing if someone says I disagree with you about this policy. But once you start throwing out nasty sexual insults, right? There's no return. It's over. You know what I'm saying? And the fact that I watch this happen and I'm trying to not alienate everybody. I mean, obvious. I think, right, Noah's saying the disagreement was about patriotic socialism. And, I am for patriotic socialism. I'm the guy who invented patriotic socialism, basically. I mean, me and Peter Coffin, we, started talking that way. And we got, it became this trendy thing to smear us. You can't be patriotic and be a socialist. That means you're a Nazi. But so she was wrong about that, but I was trying to I was watching it happen. All these bots are going after her and saying nasty things, sexual things, stuff that's even racist, right? Anti-Asian stuff about Asian women and prostitution. And I saw this and I was just horrified by what I was watching, right? And again, that's a bridge that is burned that can never be repaired. You know what I'm saying? You don't have to do that. Nick Fuentes does that. Right? He doesn't agree with Marjorie Taylor Greene, and so he makes it sexual and hateful and nasty really quick. He could just say, Marjorie, I don't agree with this. But it immediately turns into her private life. She's fat. And that tells to me that Nick is toxic. And I think that community, honestly, I think that community that went after Luna, I have my suspicions about them as well. Because, again, it doesn't have to go there, right? And I generally don't go there. Right. That's probably why I didn't do. I mean, I did well, right? If you go to my YouTube channel, you watch the debates. I did well. I debated Destiny. I debated Vosh. But the weakness in those debates, I think I did well in all those debates. I think I won all of those debates for the most part. But the weakness in those debates, I'm too nice. I am. I don't want to offend people. My goal in those debates was not to humiliate the other person, not to insult the other person, but to actually convince them. And that's just how I relate to other people, right? If I'm in a room with somebody, even if they really disagree with me, my goal is not to alienate them. My goal is to connect with them. And I debated Destiny and I did pretty well. And I debated Vosh and I did pretty well. But yeah, there were times in that debate with Vosh where I was too nice to him because I'm a nice guy, right? My goal is not, I was not on that debate to try and hurt Vosh's feelings. I was on that debate to try and win him over, right? That's what I was trying to do. And he was trying to hurt me and I was trying to win him over and I did a pretty good job, but I wasn't nasty, right? At one point, and I could have been nasty. I mean, there were times I look back on it and I said, oh, I could have really, he said something was an appeal. He was saying that anyone who supports the Soviet Union, anyone who supports North Korea is the same as a Nazi. So I started listing people who supported the Soviet Union, like W.B. Du Bois, like Albert Einstein. And he said, well, that's just an appeal to authority. And I didn't even respond to that. But that's not what an appeal to authority is. I'm a nice guy. And I'm thinking like, that's not what that is. Like, does he know? An appeal to authority is if you like say, oh, college professor says, the president says. That's not an appeal to authority. He listed a criteria for people that are the same as Nazis. And I started saying there's all kinds of people that would fit. And he said, that's an appeal to authority. If I was nasty, like Vosh, if I had the Vosh mentality, I wouldn't have been like, do you even know what an appeal to authority is? You are retarded. Oh, but I didn't do that because that's not how I act, right? Because in dealing with people in real life as a political organizer, if somebody doesn't know what they're talking about and you proceed to taunt them about it, they don't like you, right? And so my instinct, I wasn't going to go, oh, you're retarded, appeal to authority, you don't know what you're talking about, Vosh is a dummy, everybody. I'm not going to do that because that's just not how you act. That's just not decent human behavior, right? And if there's somebody I disagree with and they got divorced or had an affair, or it's not my business, I'm not going to bring it up because you don't do that, right? And especially if I'm trying to win them over, right? I mean, would you like somebody who started talking about your sex life loudly? No. And I'm too nice. And this internet culture that is developed is you're supposed to be as nasty and mean and hateful as possible. I don't think that's helpful. And I view Nick Fuentes, I view the BreadTube community, and I view certain other people that have arisen. They are hateful and mean and nasty, and they create burned bridges real quick, and that is very suspicious to me, right? And it seems like they always target anyone who's doing anything in real life, right? They're not part of any real organization or any real community. They just want you watching them, and they get their audience into more and more of a bubble, where Nick Fuentes supporters, they just start talking nasty, right? That if you go around using ethnic and racial slurs, people don't like you, right? And if you go around using that kind of swarmy voice, the way he talks, people don't like to hear that, right? Nick Fuentes is somebody that if I met him in real life, if I was sitting at the table with him, I'd be thinking, can I get up? I wouldn't want. I mean, look at him, right? I mean, he sits there and he's like, I mean, he just everything about him is like, ugh. But if you become a Nick Fuentes fan, right, you kind of get into this bubble where you forget that that's an ugly way to be. That's unattractive to most people. And they start talking that way and they isolate themselves and they start acting that way with other people. Right. It messes with their minds. And that's why I think that Nick Fuentes is a plant. I really do. Right. I think he's some kind of plant because he's acting against his own interest. If he was serious, he would love Marjorie Taylor Greene. Yeah, if he was serious about his beliefs, he'd hate AOC. I mean, because he's a conservative. He might even hate, liberal pro-Palestine activists. He might hate neocon Republicans. But if he's serious, why does he hate Marjorie Taylor Greene? Why in the world does he talk about her weight? And why in the world does he talk about her marriage? You know what I mean? And why in the world does it go there? And if he's serious, why is he not training his audience of young men who are anti-Israel conservatives to be very good, articulate speakers who make coherent arguments that win people over? Why is he training them to use racial slurs and to talk in a slimy voice and be rude? Why is he training them to do that? Right? If he wanted to build a network of anti-Israel conservatives who were serious, he'd be on there being the good example for them, right? And he would be on there talking in ways that he wanted them to emulate and making coherent arguments that he would want them to make, right? He would sound completely different. Something's off, right? Something's off. And that the bro debate culture stuff that is intentionally fomented, right? I think there's something going on here, folks. I'll be honest. And I'm just kind of giving you my opinion as a content creator, as a political organizer, as somebody who's been in this game for a long time, as someone who's trying their damnedest to build a group that can stand with Russia and push forward these peace talks and be in the streets supporting Russia and a network of people that are anti-imperialists. I'm telling you that I don't like what I see. I don't like what I see. And, the other thing to remember is that, not everything has to be a conspiracy, right? Nick Fuentes might just be a weirdo. But how does he get blasted and boosted? And who funds him? And who makes sure he gets blasted in the algorithms, right? He may not know that there are people supporting him, that there are sinister forces supporting him. And that's true for all these different people. And that's one of the problems with the internet. I mean, your Patreon, who knows where that money comes from, right? And the deep state and intelligence and nefarious actors can just push money here and push money there, and you don't know where it comes from. And yeah, maybe Nick Fuentes believes that he's just a completely honest guy and he's just this swarmy, nasty, hateful guy who has these views. But somehow there's a reason there's all kinds of guys who aren't like that, who maybe have similar views but don't act that way, that we've never heard of. There's a reason for that. Okay. And that makes me suspicious. Right? I have always been just a genuine person. And that's actually what some people hate about me. I actually think that's kind of interesting. I don't know why exactly, but there's some people that see that I'm just a guy who gets on here and, warts and all, right? And they are just so determined. He can't be there. No, we need a fake. We need a fake like me. It just drives these people up the wall, right? That I exist, that I'm on here night after night, just talking about how I feel, right? And there's certain people I found out that are just, I mean, they seethe with rage at me, like, oh, how can he be there? He knows so much stuff and he reads books. Yeah, because I'm interested in this stuff, because I actually believe in what I'm doing. It's like, how can he know so much? Because I'm interested. I don't know enough about golf, right? You might know more about golf or basketball than I do. You might know more about mathematics than I do. But the stuff I care about, I tend to know a lot about. And that there are certain people that claim to believe the same thing I believe, and my existence just drives them up the wall. He exists. Well, I mean, I hate to say it, but if that's how you feel, and if my existence just drives you up the wall, that's about you. That ain't something wrong with me. That's something wrong with you, brother. Right. And, especially when these are people with much bigger platforms, have been boosted everywhere, people that come from wealthy families and all of that. But yet they sit there and, Caleb, I can't stand him. Why is he here? I'm here. Here I am. And it's because I believe in what I'm doing. And that it's like my existence exposes them. And I'm not setting out to expose these people. I'm not setting out to like reveal them to be frauds, but it's like, I am the real thing. I am a real guy who believes what he says. And it's like, next to me, their grift, their phoniness scares the hell out of them. It's like me existing will reveal them to be imposters, right? They call it imposter syndrome, right? When people know that they're not worthy of what they have, right? When people know that they it's like something like celebrities, and they have imposter syndrome. They're like, oh, I became a movie star by accident, or I became a famous rock musician by accident, right? And people that are quote unquote successful have imposter syndrome. And I think I give imposter syndrome to these people because they are imposters. A lot of them are. The people that are big all over social media are largely imposters. I mean, they don't believe in what they're saying. They just want to make a buck. They're not sincere, right? And they're very obsessed with their own image. And they haven't spent years studying this stuff like I have. They just got into it because it was trendy, and they'll stop being into it the second it's not trendy, right? And I give them imposter syndrome. I scare the crap out of them because they know they're fake, right? They're like thieves caught in the act, and they see me, and I'm just like, yeah, I've been reading these books since I was 15 years old, and YouTube didn't even exist when I got into this because I believe in this. Oh, no. Well, okay. Well, here I am, and they're all convinced they can make me go away, and they do awful things to me, right? That if I was them, I would have gone away, right? If somebody was able to dig into their personal life and, and embarrass them the way I've been embarrassed, yeah, they would go away because they don't give a shit. I'm still here because this is who I am. I'm not going to stop because this is who I am. I believe in what I'm doing. I am yours truly. I come on here night after night. I don't have a script. I don't, I mean, some nights I prepare a little bit, or I prepare a slideshow or whatever, but I'm the real deal. And it scares the hell out of these people because they know they're not. They're playing a character. One thing I will say that is a big difference between me and the phonies, right, is that I love my fans. Right? Well, first of all, I shouldn't even say my fans. I love my community. Right? I really do. I mean, the people that I read off every night. I know John McCarthy. I know Gabby. I know Noah. Right? I know Phil. I know you all. And I love you. And I want to be around you. I enjoy spending time with you. Right? You know, Noah and I drove out to Detroit the other night. We had a great time. Right? We ate in restaurants. We talked about world events. We listened to music. It was fun. I love spending time with my community. Right? I mean, Gabby and I talked on the phone this afternoon. I really I enjoy spending time with my community. These people are terrified of their fans. Absolutely terrified of them. And I saw that, when I met them. They're completely terrified of meeting their audience. Completely terrified of it. And I'm like, why? These are people who love you. These are people who listen to you all the time. Why are you terrified of them? Because they're lying. Because they're afraid that their audience will figure out that they're frauds. That's why. And it's just like, with me, I'm real. I'm myself on here night after night, and people like me and they like what I do. And so we hang out. It's fun to be with everybody. I can't always answer every phone call. I can't always hang out with everybody, but there's a layer of people here, and I enjoy being around them. Right. And you're here watching me, and that's great. And this is a way we can stay connected, and we can talk about world events. We can talk about our anti-imperialist operations. These people are absolutely terrified of the people in their audience, because they know that if the people in the audience get close enough to them, they're going to realize they're frauds. They're fake. It's an act. They're playing a character. And they also don't really believe in their own message. They almost believe that their audience are stupid. Like, how could someone be so stupid as to believe the lies that I tell every night? I mean, it's really something else, folks. It's really, really something else. And, so we're dealing with something. We're dealing with Satan here, right? It's funny. There was somebody who I was ranting about Satan the other night, and somebody in the chat said, well, Satanism, and this person, I guess, is a religious Satanist. And they were saying, well, Satanism has nothing to do with that, Caleb. I'm not talking about religious Satanism. I'm talking about the forces of darkness, the forces of evil. We're dealing with evil here, right? We're dealing with forces of darkness, and forces of darkness operate differently, right? Right? They operate differently than we do. And the sinister evil forces out there that operate, that are there to, Nick Fuentes is there to incite his audience to use racial and ethnic slurs, to make sure they don't line up behind Marjorie Taylor Greene and actually oppose, believe in anything. The forces of darkness are there to serve a very different purpose than we're trying to serve, right? I mean, it's not a question. It's not like they can use the same tactics that we use, right? They talk about how the Nazi Party and the Communist Party in Germany were enemies, but they used similar tactics, organizing militias, organizing poor people. But this is a little bit of a different situation, right? The forces of darkness that dominate social media, the evil people that are boosted in the algorithms, they are not doing what we are doing. We are doing something different than what we are doing. We are building a community of people to carry out operations. They are, I don't know what, they're running an interference counterinsurgency operation, right? They're doing some kind of weird entertainment that's designed to make sure people don't become activists. It's designed to demoralize people in the long term. And the way they act is very, very different than the way we act. And it shows, right? And they give off a very different vibe, and they're, I mean, it would never occur to me, when I was debating Vosh, it would never occur to me, absolutely never occur to me to, when he said, that's an appeal to authority, to go, that's not an appeal to authority. You're an idiot, because you don't treat people like that. But I guess you do, right? That's how these people, that occurs to them. But I would never do that. In all my years as an organizer, if somebody says, well, that's an appeal to authority, and they clearly don't know what an appeal to authority is, you don't rub it in their face to be a dick, because then they won't like you. And you're trying to get people to like you so that you can build a movement. They're not doing that. They are not trying to get people to like them. They're trying to train a group of people who are kind of herded in to watch them, to train them to be toxic, to train them to hate certain people, to train them to act a certain way. That's what they're doing. They're not trying to train people to be effective organizers and leaders of their community.